she's really cool. Like the fact that she takes some time, but she was just like, well, I think that should be more of like an HOA thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what, yeah.
Is kind of her stance, and I'm like, well, no, HOAs have actually more teeth typically to, like, if you don't want a short-term rental, like a city shouldn't be an HOA. I mean, it's kind of a big HOA, but I think there should be more freedoms at the city level, and as you get more granular, that's where you find like-minded people, just my opinion.
Well, at least you got to tell her, though.
What's that?
At least you got to tell her what you thought, and she listened to you.
And I've called and talked to a bunch of news outlets to try and get them to do a story.
On short-term rentals?
Yeah, and South Ogden being one of only a few cities that tries to prohibit them in the state. So I've been feeding this guy some information to try and get him to do a story. Only one of a few cities that does not permit them.
Wrong. I was just in a meeting yesterday down in Stone.
I should say not that are touristy. Most of them still allow them. That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Moab doesn't allow them.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
To
that-
me, it makes more sense in the tourist areas, like maybe not, because they do turn into like the party, like rent, what you don't want to have happen, but no one's partying in South Ogden.
Well, and it's ruining their neighborhoods. I mean, they don't have neighborhoods because there aren't people there all the time. And the cohesiveness of the community isn't there.
I just,
South Ogden's all one big party.
I know, right? Like, I don't think we should look at results in Miami and Vegas and compare that. Like, well, in Vegas, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
I agree with you.
Like, we're South Ogden.
Yeah. And I mean, it's gonna come back. We're gonna keep talking about it.
See, and my stance is that we should allow them, but they should be, like, find the win-win. Like, let's just not write out, oh, nope, no short-term rentals. That we should kind of come, like, we did a survey and 50% of the respondents of like, we had like 800 respondents?
No, it
400?
might have been less than that.
Was it 400, 800,
It's like around 4, wasn't it?
I think it was around 5.
500?
Yeah.
I think we should carve out an exception for Rob's cul-de-sac. No, just-
It was pretty split down the middle.
Yeah, it was like,
More or less, yeah.
but
Yeah, definitely.
my thought is but we just said, should we allow them or not? But if you ask the question, should we allow them but regulate them? I bet you would get a bunch more people that says, oh, yeah, I could see that.
Great. Yeah, it just depends. Like I've mentioned that some people are against it until you say, well, but they're owner occupied, right? Not saying we should or shouldn't, but it's just mentioning one thing that they start thinking a little bit differently. Or sometimes they just don't want them and they're totally against it and nothing you say will change their mind. Because they're passionate either way.
And what's funny is those same people, I don't want it, but then they go use them and go stay in other people's communities.
And that's the point. I don't want it next to me.
That's with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Oh, we are.
Right on the
Thank you.
dot.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to begin.
I move that we commence Planning Commission meeting for June 12th.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We'll start with, first off, introduce our new commissioner. You want to just state your name?
Brittany Rocha. Am I doing work?
Maybe just introduce yourself.
Okay.
Is anyone online?
No.
Okay, then
Streaming on YouTube.
Yeah.
streaming on
okay.
YouTube. Okay.
I'm Brittany Rocha. I am the new planning commissioner here for South Ogden. I work at Weber State University, and I have been a South Ogden resident for 11 years, and I'm very excited to be here.
Okay, and you gave me like a nice sheet that I forgot to bring, but call to order and overview of meeting procedures. Is that,
You mean for public hearing, you mean? Because that's the next item?
That's mostly what that meeting procedure was for, was
Oh,
for
okay.
public
Public hearing,
hearings.
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, and so are we just going to enter into a public hearing in section 2
Mm-hmm.
with no one here? So, all right, well,
Have it.
I'll entertain a motion to enter public hearing to receive and consider comments on proposed amendments to section 10-14-8 fence regulations.
I move that we leave the planning commission meeting and open a public hearing to receive and consider comments on the proposed amendments to section 10-14-8.
Anyone want to second that?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're now in public hearing.
Okay. All right, I don't see anyone here, but I'll still go over what the changes, or what the proposed amendment to the ordinances. So this kind of stemmed from a comment that was made in the public comment section of the May 20th City Council meeting. It was, a resident came up and explained that, well, his property is right up against a golf course, and golf balls are coming into his property and damaging his property. So he wants to put up a net. We don't have anything specific on netting in our city code right now. Staff felt that nets would fall under the definition of a fence, and you can only go 6 feet for a fence. So we did have an administrative staff internal meeting to discuss, what's the best way to approach this, because his property is not the only one, right, abutting this golf course. So there's probably other residents that may be experiencing something similar or may want to put up a net. So we decided to add a little section of code under the fence ordinance, basically addressing like the location of a net, that they're only allowed in the rear yard with a max of 30 feet, and anything over 6 feet would require a building permit. And then also looking at a couple other cities that do have net ordinances, or at least address nets in their city code. I also wanted to include sport courts. I haven't had anyone call about, putting some sort of court in their backyard, but that doesn't mean that they can't. So I just wanted to add that little section in there to address that. Same thing, they're only allowed in the rear yard, not in the front. The netting should all be black and in good condition. And then, yeah. For a sports court, the max would be 10 feet. And I believe that's basically it, at least what's in the proposed language.
You're saying the fence for the sport court could be 10 feet? Or
Like the
net,
netting
the
around,
netting,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to discuss, anyone want to discuss or have any questions?
Well,
Sorry,
no, go ahead.
You need to close the public hearing
hearing
first.
Oh. Is there any online,
I don't believe we're online anymore. Yeah.
just streaming?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
entertain a
There's-
motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Anyone want to second that?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are now out of public hearing. And now we just discuss that.
You're in. Yes. That's the next item. It's discussion on fence.
Okay, and zoning items. All right, what are everyone's thoughts?
What's a sports court?
Like if you want to put like a tennis court or basketball court.
Pickleball court.
So you're saying
Pickleball court in your
on
backyard.
city,
Like in someone's
like a
backyard.
private residence, they put that in their backyard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I haven't had one at all since I've been here, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to come up.
Does that require a permit to put that in the backyard?
Sports court, it depends on,
The
I would say
size
more
or-
like the footings and all of that, if they would need some sort of building permit. But yeah, we don't have anything specific in our code about that. It's not technically an accessory building because it doesn't have walls. It's a
Is there-
structure, but it's not a building.
Do we have something in our zoning ordinance about, I can't remember, the word slipped me, but the concrete in your backyard can be only a percentage?
No, so we do have percentage
Right,
on
right.
accessory building, right? They can only take up to 25% of your backyard.
I thought we had like a percentage of cement or non-porous, I might be saying this wrong, but
I can't remember.
permeable.
Yes.
Permeable
That's
area.
for the front yard.
Just for the
Yeah,
front yard.
right, not for the
But you
back.
can fill your whole backyard with cement if you wanted.
Technically, yeah, because we don't specify. Now, in other cities I've been at, that cement counts within that 25%. So there's no setbacks, right? You can go up to the property line for the cement or for the concrete, but it counts towards that 25%. But we should be more clear on that, because right now it just says accessory buildings can only take up 25% of your rear yard.
Maybe another question I was thinking when Commissioner Gresham was saying about the sport courts.
Mhm.
Are we saying that our ordinance also applies to say you have a sport court, but it's not up against the property line?
Mhm.
Do we care if it's in just the middle of their backyard and they were to put up a
A net?
net, or do we only care if it's on the property line?
No, even in the middle, just how tall, just because it's going to be higher than, I guess, the 6 feet that we would for a fence, that they would have for a fence. And granted, I guess it doesn't have to be 10 feet. We can discuss that. That was just
Okay.
a number throughout it there. No, it's not just if it's right up against their property line. Because I don't even imagine that a net for this property, that it would be up against the property line. This specific resident does have a fence, so it would be probably a foot away. And that's something we can also add to the ordinance is, do we want it to have a certain setback from the property line or from the fence?
Another-
It's not included there right now.
Why doesn't why should these residents pay for putting up a net instead of the golf course being responsible to not allow the golf balls to escape?
That's kind of hard. You mean, why don't they put up a net?
Yeah, I mean,
I think the golf course will tell you that it's the golfer's responsibility.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's been happening. This specific resident has gone to the golf course and said, hey, it's your golf balls, you know? And so they're like, well, we don't know who did it. We don't know what golfer, didn't have a good.
Might even be residents who like don't want to have a net in their backyard, right? Now all of a sudden the golf course is putting netting across like the whole thing,
point.
and they're like, I was fine.
I don't
Yeah.
want that
I
net
don't want
there.
that tonight. Yeah.
And funny enough, this wasn't our resident, but I did get a call from a resident in, why did I call Mary Slaterville, Washington Terrace, that was worried that the golf course would put up a net and block their view. So it can go either way, right? This specific resident in our city just wants to protect his property. So he wants to put it up. So this is just to give our residents a chance to put it up if they want one.
Yeah, you talked about like a foot setback on the net. I guess I'm curious why you wouldn't want to just put it on the property line or like above the.
We could.
Okay.
We could. We don't, that's just a number we put out there. The foot, it's kind of following our accessory building ordinance of being a foot from the property line. Yeah, I guess we could talk about possibly putting it on the property line. I'm assuming most of these residents have a fence there already, a 6-foot fence. Have some sort of separation. But yeah, we can discuss having it closer than a foot.
And we actually do have, it doesn't mention sports courts specifically, but it's grouped with the swimming pools, tennis, pickleball courts, skateboard ramps, basketball standards, or courts. And there are some restrictions about them as far as where they can be placed in the back. They have to be in the backyard,
Right.
but they actually make them set back from the neighbors.
Didn't we've talked about fences and swimming pools in the past, if I recall, so it seems
Yeah.
like that's been a topic of discussion in the past.
Mm-hmm.
We somewhat discussed it last year, but that was more for the setbacks of the pool.
That's right.
From what I recall for building code, they either have to have some sort of cover over the pool or fencing 3 feet, or I guess not really a fence, or a gate, 3 feet from the edge of the pool. There are cities that do require the gate though, just to say, hey, this is what you have to do, follow building code.
Sorry, that was a tangent.
No, you're good.
So,
We can start with what is suggested there under recreation use.
I have a question on, so we're proposing 10 feet.
Mhm.
Where did that number come from?
You mean for the sports court?
Yep, or for the netting, for like the,
So for the netting, for like,
for golf
to
balls?
protect for the golf balls, it's actually 30 feet
Oh,
that I'm
30 feet,
proposing.
okay.
Mhm.
I was like, I don't know that that'll be tall.
I've seen, that kind of came from other codes that I've seen, and actually they go more than 30 feet. They go, I think, 60.
65 was the height.
Yeah, 60, 65. I think I even saw one
That's
for
a
70.
massive net.
Which, right, and 30 feet is usually the height for like a 2-story house. That's why I settled for that one. 30 to 35 is what you would see for a 2-story house. But it doesn't have to be that. That was just a starting point. It's just a suggestion. How do we feel about that height restriction for 30 feet?
I guess I don't, do we have any data to know, like,
I mean, it depends on
don't.
where their house is as far as the golf course.
Right.
If they're right at the tee box, a 20-foot fence could work.
Uh-huh.
But if they're down on a par 5 where you're trying to hack at a ball, I don't know. I never thought about this before.
Right.
I think 30 is a good start.
Yeah.
And see where it,
Yeah.
just put it in the code, and then if someone's like, I want 50 feet,
35,
then
yeah.
we readdress it. Is that kind of what you think, Commissioner? Becker?
Maybe word
Yeah.
somehow where you can, in the permit,
I mean, like the building permit?
explain they're going to have to get a building permit, correct?
Right, anything over 6 feet, yeah.
And then they'd have to explain why they'd want, what height they want in their site plan.
Yeah, you mean if it's beyond the 30 feet? Yeah, but at that point, it would default back to the code. Because if we're saying, okay, it's going to be 30 feet, and they submit a building permit, and they say, well, I actually want 40 feet, it would fall into an exception, and that's a different part of the code.
But this guy just wants a 30-foot one.
He didn't specify. He just said, I want to put up a net.
He'll take whatever he gets.
Yeah.
So Commissioner Gresham, are you saying actually put an exception in the
Yes.
code at the first,
So it
saying,
doesn't specify a height, you put it in your site plan what height you want.
or say if
Okay.
30, but if it was above 30, staff could approve it
Or that, yeah.
based
on
on
your-
certain conditions?
Yeah, you would have to apply for an exception or
Because
ask for an
otherwise, they
exception.
gotta do all this data, like, I don't really feel
Right.
comfortable passing like 30 feet without data supporting, like, okay, you know, so if there is room for exceptions or approval, I think that's better.
Yeah, we can add something in there for exceptions. Anything over 30 feet would have to ask for an exception from planning staff, planning and building staff, I would say.
Yeah.
Did anything come up in these other reviews or city, like, I guess, who would object to someone putting up a really high net? I think like maybe neighbors adjacent.
Yeah,
Uh,
probably.
yeah.
So just, again, brainstorming, but maybe you do, I don't know what, 30 or whatever, but
Yeah.
maybe that could be in the code, like to go above a certain threshold, you just need the neighbor on either side of you to not be upset with it. I don't know. Maybe that's not a good idea.
I don't know about that one. Yeah, I mean, I did call other cities too that I knew would have golf courses. None of them really have, at least not near us, have some sort of code or requirements for it. They basically just say it's a fence. You can't have it more than 6 feet. Take it down. Yeah, I mean, the main code that I looked at, and the staff report kind of go into it a little bit, it was St. George and I want to say a city in either Colorado or Washington.
Thornton, Colorado.
Yeah.
So I think, as we were talking to Tyson too, beyond 30 feet, Tyson's our
Building official.
building official. Beyond 30 feet, the engineering for a net is gonna be.
Costly.
Yeah,
It'd be
but,
cost prohibitive to go too much higher than this from an engineering and a material standpoint.
Well-
It just gets crazy. If you're down in Washington and you're on, you know, you've got a $4 million house and you want a 65-foot net, you can afford a 65-foot net. But I think that he was saying that it kind of covers our bases here without being.
Well, and they still need engineered plans over 6 feet regardless. But yeah, the higher it goes, it's going to be harder. But that doesn't mean that we can't allow it. That would just be on them to be able to spend that extra money.
We're probably talking about less than 20 houses
Yeah.
in South Ogden that border a golf course.
Right, yeah.
Is that true?
There's not that many, yeah. And it would just, this would only apply, or at least this little section would only apply to those homes directly, like adjacent to the golf course.
And I don't know if this is even something to think about, but like Mount Ogden Golf Course, they have the fences on their property that line the ninth hole, I think, so that if you shag one off to the right, it hits a net before it hits all the beautiful houses. Maybe making the golf course responsible to put the net up so that it doesn't hit those houses. I don't know if even that's a,
Yeah, but that still doesn't help this resident that wants to put it up. But I understand what you're
that's
saying,
true.
right?
You're right, you're right.
And that's true. Maybe if it's like, well, if the golf course is willing to cover that cost, then maybe I don't have to. But that would involve having conversation with the golf course. We don't have requirements for them to have that net.
I don't
So
think
we
we can
can't really
the
make
golf
them.
course do
We
it.
can talk to them and say, hey, can you? But we can't make them. And this is just a way to give the residents the option to protect their property if it's a problem for them. If it's not, then they don't put it up, and that's fine. But yeah, it's only a handful. Well, more than a handful.
I saw one of I think the Colorado code talked about had some obstructive, or what was it called? Like triangulation and,
Yeah.
where was it? That it should comply with some visual obstruction code.
Regulations. You put a link in here for that.
Yeah, there's I guess the Thornton, Colorado has some,
I think they were mainly talking about I think more of like the line of sight triangle. It wasn't anything, if I remember correctly, when I went to that link, it was just making sure that it's not obstructing like anyone's views when you're
gotcha.
driving by or getting in and out of a driveway.
Just another thought. Could someone potentially use the code and just put up really big posts and, 30
could.
feet high and put a lot of them and then I got this little piece of net in between each of them. Essentially create a 30. I know I'm probably just
So
thinking worst case scenario. No one would probably actually really ever do something like that, but
I don't put anything past anybody. So wait, explain again what you're saying. Put up
like say
poles.
someone wanted to find a loophole,
Okay.
and
to
so
put poles.
they're like, well, these are my netting posts, and they just line their whole backyard with all these posts that extend
Okay.
30 feet in the air, and then they have just little pieces of net.
I guess that's where I'm not. What do you mean little pieces of net?
of the netting, like it just.
They
put in
40 posts, but.
Oh, like
2
close
feet.
together?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
to give themselves a 30-foot fence almost.
But they're not gonna be able to line their backyard with this net. That's not the point.
Yeah, that's not the point of this. Because it's not replacing putting a net versus a fence, like a vinyl fence or whatever they want to put back there.
And it was only on the one side, we couldn't do it on the sides of the house, right? It was just the back?
Yeah, and it's just for those properties next to the golf course.
Like
I
adjacent
doubt
to
it-
if
yeah.
someone's side yard was adjacent to the golf course. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's the rear yard. I think that's how it was worded. It was, golf safety nets may be permitted only on lots where a property is adjacent to a golf course. So, none of you would be able to put up a
Good as a
net.
fence. Yeah, what good is a net at that point?
If you have a
It's
fence.
coming on an angle, it's not being hit right at the house.
Yeah. So it's not saying specifically backyard, it just is saying if you're adjacent, you can have it.
Yeah, but you can only have it, but then the rest of the code says you can only have it in the backyard.
Oh,
Mhm. Yeah, they're prohibited in the front yard. That's what it says. But,
So it could be the side yard.
yeah,
Well, are we,
I would say.
unless we say no.
I would say not. I don't know how to word it, but it's going to be similar. It's got to have a site plan approved so that we can see where the problem was and if your net is going to stop it. If you're going to do something with the net around your property that isn't going to stop a golf ball, then why are you doing it?
But it's kind of hard to know unless we're an expert on like where the holes are in the golf course.
I'm
and
not a
how that's gonna
golfer, so
come.
I'm,
And like it doesn't impact.
I think having a net on your side yard is more important than directly in back, depending on the
Depending
layout
on
of
where
the
you're,
course.
yeah. Yeah,
Unless your house is, yeah, you're right. It's going to depend on where the house is on the golf course. Because
Yeah.
if your house is behind the green and someone overshoots it, you need a net all along your back. But if
Mhm.
you're down the tee box, you're not going to need it down your back. You're going to need it
Sure.
just probably in your side yard,
yeah, which
backyard.
we could
like if your
allow.
neighbor, you're saying like in a scenario where your neighbors don't have a
But it-
net, and it comes flying by over their yard and then into your house because their neighbors don't have a net, is that, because I'm trying to understand this.
I'm trying to think it through too, and I think maybe we're thinking about it too much.
Yeah, and I
I think
mean,
so.
That's where I am. I think at this point, we keep it simple
Yeah.
because it
Right.
affects so few people and then see if there's problems, so.
yeah, I mean, we could put in the exception that was mentioned of anything over 30, or 35 or whatever we feel comfortable with.
I have hit a house with a golf ball before. So.
So you're the problem.
if there'd been a 30-foot net, would it saved it?
Yeah, I probably would have.
Can we name this the Bradley ordinance?
Bradley.
There's actually a thing on social media right now with Peyton Manning hits a house while he's golfing, and it was
Oh.
filmed, and they all kind of giggle and laugh, and
That was kind of funny, wasn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Oh, let's dial this back in or reel it back into,
No, you're good.
I digress.
TikTok for forever.
Just see how exactly funny it is.
so I guess does anyone want to make a motion?
Well, or how do we feel about the first part with the fence around the courts?
Oh,
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Because all it really says is the 10 feet. And it may not be located in the front yard, front setback. The only thing I would add to that would be still anything over 6 feet would need a building permit.
you're saying for the first one still?
Yeah. Yeah, because from speaking to Tyson, that was basically it. It was like, yeah, anything over 6 feet, we need to have some sort of engineering involved. So just putting that in there. And if they touch base with him and he sees what exactly they're doing and he figures that you don't need a building permit, then they don't need to go through that. How do we feel about having a land use permit required for this specific thing?
I'm always of the opinion that just the more instruction you give without them needing to have to go interface with the government, the better. No offense. But let's just give them what they need and then let them kind of go do it.
Okay.
It's just my thoughts, but
I have a question. So what if somebody puts a sports court in and they put a 12-foot net in because they didn't have to do any kind of a check and see pass? And then it's outside of code.
and this goes back to that same debate we've had in the past, like that scenario will probably still happen because they probably didn't read the code to begin with. And
I will say for this one, because we're requiring a building permit, I can check it then. Over 6
we're just
feet.
talking still the sport court thing, right?
Yeah. Like a net. Yeah. And we're not really giving any setbacks. Did we want to add any setbacks for, not necessarily sports courts, but for like the golf safety net?
So I'm not clear on if we require a building permit,
Over 6 feet.
what
yeah.
what additional information would we gain with a land use permit?
Just to make sure that it's located where it needs to be. But granted, we're not giving setbacks. Yeah, that's what I'm saying it, because I'm not too worried about it because we're gonna have a building permit. I guess it'd be more for the nets that would be under 6 feet, which I don't think anyone would want to put up, because then you have a fence there. You know what I mean? Yeah.
How high can a shed be before you need to go get the permit again? I think
It's
it was.
not, it's based off of square footage, so 200 square feet.
But I think that, when I built my shed, I remember, because I kept it I didn't want to come to the city. So I kept it underneath all the
So you didn't
things,
have
and my shed's like a story and a half. So, it was like 15, 16 feet, if I think I recall right.
So the walls have to be 10 feet, and the max height is 19 feet to the very top. But you would need a building permit if it's more than 200 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I
I mean,
kept
if
my
you were
number.
if you were 199, you wouldn't need to have a building permit at all. You would still need to obviously follow the height restrictions and all of that, but.
Well, I'll tell you why I'm asking this question, because I'm just thinking if someone's putting a court in their backyard and they're not touching I'd be concerned as a neighbor if someone was up against the property line and they were putting like a huge mega fence. But
Okay.
if they're just putting a sport court and a fence around the property in the interior of their backyard, I don't know, just might be a little bit, I'm thinking it's a little bit onerous to make them come and ask Mother May I to the city.
To put in the net or the sports
More
court
the sport court fence is what I'm,
for your
And I guess that's what our building inspector said, well, you want to make sure that any fence over 6 feet has the correct engineering, because it requires more than just a 6-foot fence.
Yeah.
is
But
he
I-
worried about safety of the people who live in the house?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes back to that, if it can handle that load. Granted, I'm not an expert on nets, their building loads or anything like that, or even their foundation. But that's why I defaulted to a building official.
So that extra 4 feet of fence is somehow deadly?
It could
not-
be.
Well,
I'm not well
maybe
versed
not-
though.
Maybe not deadly, but a 10-foot fence falling can cause structural damage, and you're most likely gonna, depending on the setback, it's gonna fall into a neighbor's and cause property damage elsewhere other than contained on your own property. Which is why he wants the engineering done on those.
I don't know. I could go either way on this. I'm actually more in favor of just doing things that reduce touch points for people just to kind of govern themselves, but again, that's just me.
Yeah, I'm kind of that way too. I think just giving some basic guidelines and then let it be,
Okay.
especially with this little you know,
People is going to impact, yeah.
issues that we have, potential issues in the city that we have like that.
Well, under the 10-14-12, which is about swimming pools, courts, there are setback requirements, and it's like,
For the court.
and a sports court, I think, would fall under that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah.
So it just says that it may not be located closer than 15 feet to any property line of the property on which it is located. It shall not be less than 30 feet from any neighbor's dwelling, the dwelling itself, not the
Right.
property line.
Right.
Neighbor's dwelling, or 20 feet from any side lot line of any adjacent vacant lot.
But that's just the location of the court itself.
But usually the fence is right around the
right
court,
against-
so,
yeah.
I mean,
But we're talking more about the height of the net, what's the location. Because, yeah, I mean, I don't expect them to have the net, or I don't know, maybe we need to be clear on that. Like, can't be more than a foot or 2 feet from it, but I don't imagine they would want it that far out.
I've got a two-part question.
Mhm.
If the idea is that we like just let people kind of govern themselves, we just do a very basic generic amendment to this.
Mhm.
If in the future we do run into problems, one, how easy is it to amend like what we put in there? Is it just kind of like what we're doing? Okay. And then two, if we then decide, okay, we do need to make this a little bit stricter, what happens to the people who already have like put things up? Is it grandfathered
They're
in?
grandfathered
Okay.
in, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
they're grandfathered in. Yeah, we'll say though, we do have a new code compliance official, so if someone complains, if it's not done to our requirements, they will be told to take it down. Or tear it down or whatever it is. Anything else?
Anyone want to make a motion?
so I guess the question is, do you want to create setbacks for a net
Well, more so for the golf safety nets.
for the, on a golf course?
I'd say no.
Or do you want to
So-
just leave it as is? Because the sports court's already regulated
It's already
with
covered.
setbacks.
Yeah.
I'm fine with them putting it right on the property line
Me
if
too,
you want it,
I'm
but
totally okay with that.
Same.
Same here.
And then, did we still want to add in, leave the 30 and add the exception?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that was the only thing. Okay.
I was about to make a motion, but when you said leave the 30 and add the exception, what exception are you talking about?
Just what Commissioner Gresham was saying, that if they wanted to put up a net that's over 30 feet, we can write it in the exception of
Like staff review kind of
staff
thing.
review, yeah, planning and probably building staff review
To exceed the 30 feet.
to exceed the 30 feet, yeah. Unless you want to raise it, it doesn't have to be 30 feet, because we can change it and go up higher than that. Like I said, the codes that I saw were 60 feet. I just personally thought that was too high.
That's very big net.
Yeah, but all yours.
I mean, I think I'm comfortable with the 30 feet with the allowance of if it's necessary that it's larger in some cases, then they can come in and we can discuss that and get that going for them.
Okay.
I move that we recommend approval to the city council for the amendment to 10-14-8 to add the recreation use section, which includes requirements for nets, with the exception that a resident may apply for an exception through the normal staff procedure. if they want to exceed 30 feet.
Are you going to address number 1 on the sport court in your motion?
Are you changing anything for that? I don't think anything was being changed from what.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right, do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
A second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And-
Yeah,
Okay.
it's an ordinance.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bradley,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Rocha,
Yes.
Commissioner Gresham,
Yes.
and Commissioner Bruder, yes. Is that how I do that?
You did it.
All right, great. Let's move on to special items. Or I guess 4A, vote on planning commissioner rules and procedures. We'll turn the time over to Alika to,
Yeah. So, yeah, this is continuation. So last meeting, we were recommending approval for amending our ordinance for, or the ordinance for planning commission policy and procedures to allow the chair to vote and to, let's see, just redefine basically the majority, that it doesn't have to be 4 members agreeing on one motion. That went on to city council and was approved. So now it's back so that the planning commission can vote on your policy and procedures. The ordinance is in place. This is just looking at specifically your policy and procedures. So the main change was under voting, but we can discuss anything on policy and procedures, anything you want to add or change. But yeah, the main reason for it being on the agenda was to add that change from the ordinance.
So there's also something in here about, should we move public comment to the beginning of the meeting?
That's an old note that got left on there, but there was much debate at the time as to whether it should be at the beginning or the end. So, if you want to discuss it, you can, but I think that was just kind of left in there from before.
was that a long time? That was probably before my time, I think. Because I don't remember that.
Yeah, and that's the public comment at the end of the agenda, not the public hearing. So I guess, yeah, do you guys care? Do you want to leave it where it's at? Have it at the beginning?
I have no opinion.
No, I'm good
I
either
don't
way.
feel strongly enough about that to to worry about it.
Have so many people come.
We could if we spread the word. Okay.
Did we want to discuss the, what Commissioner Bradley brought up with
Putting something on the agenda.
putting something on the agenda and maybe formalize some procedures or policies or rules of engagement on that?
Sure.
What were you thinking,
How do we
Commissioner
feel?
Bradley?
Well, I don't know, whether to put it in there formally. We've kind of acted informally, and apparently the city council acts somewhat informally as well, but my thought was to put it in there that the chairman can put an item on the agenda, any commission member can put an item on the agenda, staff can put items on the agenda, but I think the same, what is apparently a Roberts rule should apply, that if you're putting an issue on that has already been voted upon, only a person with the winning vote could put it on the agenda.
Any thoughts?
Just for like what you said, so that we don't go back and forth every week.
So what would happen if, I think that's good, but what about, say, 3 years from now, we're all gone and no one's still here. And so there's no one left on the winning side.
Oh, man.
Or
Well-
maybe not even time, but like whoever, if there is someone who still on the commission who was part of the winning side, like they have to be the one to put, like, agree to put it back on. Like there's still someone on the commission.
I wonder
don't know
if
about
we just said that we adopt the Roberts rules, would that cover it? Is there a rule?
Well, we could. It
I
still
would-
doesn't solve.
I just think that that's a situation where, once we've done it, we don't revisit it until the issue's been brought up in public again, when a citizen comes in and talks to us again.
Okay.
But aren't we all public?
You have to stand
That could
over
be the
there.
next week.
Sure. I mean, technically, I guess they can fill out an application saying, hey, I want this to be part of the city code.
What if you did say 90 days? 6 months?
Or maybe
I
a
guess
year?
my question would be to that, what do other places do? What do other cities do? Is there a time element that you've got to expire and be like, okay, now we can talk about that again?
No, not really.
And the last city I worked for, you had to have a majority could bring it back. So didn't matter whether it was winning side, if you could whip enough people to say, Chair, there's 3 of us that want to revisit this again, then you
That's-
know that there's going to be enough discussion had
Yeah.
that it would be a valuable
That's-
conversation to have again.
I think
great
that's a
idea.
good.
Just say the majority of the
compromise.
commission.
3 was three was the magic number.
Yeah, we can leave it at 3 or go to 4.
Yeah.
A
it doesn't
quorum,
matter.
I
But
guess.
mean,
4
you
would be
can
our
decide
magic
amongst
number.
yourselves, like, do you want it to be a majority? Do you want it just to be more than 1? You know, what is that number? But
Yeah.
that would say to me, if there's been enough discussion or enough has changed that enough
We can bring it
people want to
back.
bring it back,
I think a
whether it's
majority is
week
probably good.
Or a month, or a
Yeah,
year.
but we should still set a number. Like out of 7 commissioners, how many?
4 out of 7.
Yeah. I mean, 4 is a quorum.
We rarely have all 7 of us here.
Well, we, in theory, I guess we should have all 7.
I think you want to set somewhat of a burden for, to make it a little bit difficult, so you don't revisit things
I
over
was just
and
going to
over.
say, I'll be honest, I'm not nearly as passionate as you are about it.
It doesn't have to be that,
But
though.
in that
It could be anything.
situation, right now, you can bring it back up and we'd be talking about it again. And now you add 2 more people, and we know what would happen. It probably is gonna happen. We're gonna talk about it again. That's what I'm saying, this is the
We're gonna
whole
talk
rule
about
to
it.
avoid talking about this every month that we get together. Which I don't care.
And I guess that was the reason for the 4, so that, because then you would know that it would maybe have a possibility of
And
passing.
I think 4 is good. I guess, how does that happen in practice? Like, can you do that in an email? Does it have to be in this meeting where you're like, hey, let's vote on it officially in this meeting to put it back on
Can't
the
be
agenda?
no.
Or can we just like email back and forth and say, all right, 4 of us want this on the agenda again, or?
I think
It should be,
For us, it could happen.
I think it could be
informally,
informal,
but
yeah.
that's up to you guys.
You can talk after,
Yeah.
meet up, say,
well,
okay, the 4 of us.
no, because
No,
then
not
that's
in a-
violating open meeting rules.
Yeah.
I'm saying you should
Maybe
do it in a
individually.
meeting, and I think you should vote on it. So you don't violate open meeting rules.
Well, but 2 of them, they could have a conversation amongst themselves, and
It's
you
true.
can say, I'm
I
gonna talk to
know.
these 2, and you're gonna talk to these 2.
Yeah.
You just have to be careful, though.
You're skirting,
And they're
Okay, maybe we can bring it
You're really
up
gonna-
in the meeting.
Well, that's the
They just can't
goal,
respond.
don't copy all, but I do think that there is some value in having conversations to determine determine whether it's even worth.
No, yeah, that's fine.
And I think those should happen in the public, in my opinion.
Whether or not they should come up. Okay. So how would that work, though? Would
Excellent.
we put it on the agenda?
Next, then am I just gonna, every meeting be like, all right, guys,
Let's
are
talk
we
about
ready to
this."
call a vote on whether we should put this back on the agenda?
I mean, in theory. That's the only thing is, I do agree that it should be decided in an open meeting. But gosh.
Well, I think any commissioner during the public comment period could say, I want this back on the agenda. Do any other three of you agree with me?
Yeah, I mean,
And then
whatever, it doesn't have to be.
that commissioner
that.
can talk to other commissioners one-on-one outside the meeting.
Yeah, whatever you
They
do
can-
outside, we can't dictate. Just be careful not to have quorum. But yeah, in theory, though, if there was something, and an entirely different code, I don't know. Let's go back to netting, I guess, right? If you were very passionate about netting, you could bring it up every meeting until you get 3 other commissioners to agree with you. We shouldn't put a limit on that. Whether it's annoying or not, that doesn't matter.
It matters to me.
It's not how you win friends and influence people, but hey, you can do
That's
it.
that's up to them.
Are we just creating a rule because everyone's worried that I'm gonna keep bringing
I
this up?
don't care.
Because I can also agree to like cool it and just bring it up like once every 5 or 6 months. And we don't even have to
That could work too.
like create a rule.
No, I'm
but
not
just
creating a
anything.
rule for that because frankly, I don't mind if it gets brought up again, but this is not the only scenario where it will happen, and somewhere down the road, somebody's going to be really passionate over something really dumb.
Yeah. Like netting, right?
Like,
Maybe it's the color of the net, right? I did say black. Maybe
Yeah, I
it's
agree
like, it can be neon colors.
Oh.
I don't know.
and I mean, the discussion we had then and the vote was so close. I don't care about it being revisited. That doesn't bother me at all. I just don't want it to happen every time somebody's upset that they didn't get their way.
And that's only if it's already been voted on.
Right.
But if it hasn't been voted on at all, I think any commissioner, we can still write that in and say, hey, you can put it on the agenda.
What about if an item is tabled? How, I mean,
Well, a lot of times someone will make a motion to table something for a future meeting when we can't agree.
Yeah, but not
Usually-
always go. Or sorry, go ahead.
I know usually when something is tabled, they'll put a time saying until this point. Like
Like
I
a
know we
condition
waited
list.
for a while after legislative session because we wanted to know what they were going to do about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know that a table is problematic.
Not here. I know in other counties, once something is tabled, it's done. Like, it doesn't come back. In fact, my first job as a planner, like, don't ever table anything because it never comes back. And I've worked in other cities.
I
and
don't
that
hate the
hasn't been
idea of 90
case.
days. I don't hate that idea just because I think that if we're going to do this every month, basically that's you reaching out to me or whoever and trying to talk me into agreeing with you.
Mhm.
If you give it time, maybe I will have some change of heart about the whole thing and I'll have time to have considered other things. Other things in life might have happened. 90 days, I don't know if that's, but it seems like it put a time on it like that. I don't even know if it's 90, 2 meetings, I don't know.
And are we talking if the motion dies versus if you recommend a negative, like for a negative recommendation to city council and they vote on it? Like, what are we referring to?
I think we're referring to something where we've recommended not to advance something to the city council.
And it just stays here?
And it
Dies?
kind of dies here.
Okay.
Then I think we're trying to
Yeah.
make it so that we're just not annoying everyone with continually bringing the same topics up.
And I don't know that we need to specify what kind of vote. I think we're just saying any issue can be brought back with this procedure, but
Another thought, though, what if the city council, I mean, sometimes the city council does throw things over to us and says, hey, we want you to, like the chickens, for example.
That's
Right.
different. I think
Like-
then we revisit it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Less order.
I think we have
That's
to.
ordered by city council.
I mean, if another citizen come in
Yeah.
and wanted to discuss it again,
Like in the public
Yeah.
comment
Mhm.
section.
or they get to them and want it put on the agenda.
Yeah, they can also fill out an application. That's how the pool
Yeah, I like that.
setbacks came up. Application was filled out. So,
Does anyone want to make a motion?
what's the consensus here with that? What did we agree on?
So I was hoping someone would.
I'll make a
Perfect.
motion that
Motion.
this, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Let's see. If we have voted on something in order to revisit it, 90 days it had to pass? Or it's brought up from the public or sent to us from city council?
Does he need to say I move before that to make it official?
Didn't I say I move?
Whatever.
Make a motion.
Motion.
It's okay.
moved.
It's okay.
Like, it sounded like you-
Oh, did he say it? I'm sorry. You probably said it, I just didn't hear it.
And you're also okay with the change of voting from the ordinance?
That the
With the-
chairman can vote.
The chairman
Oh,
can vote
absolutely.
and the majority and all
Yes.
of that.
All right, we have a motion. Any second?
I'll second it.
All right, Commissioner Gresham,
Yes.
Commissioner Rocha, or Rocha,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruder, yes. All right, let's move on to special items B, discussion of law research paper for moderate income housing. Alika, take us away.
Yeah, this is a fun one. So this came from City Council. So this was presented at the May 20th City Council meeting. To my understanding, at the end of 2023, a law research paper was submitted to the city as part of work for one of our strategies. I believe it was strategy 2. Don't think it was ever really discussed, at least not in depth, with either planning commission or city council. And that's why it was brought up at the May 20th city council meeting, in order for it to count as to report on this year's reporting period for modern income housing. But part of that discussion, so we went over the main points of the research paper. It was part of the packet. It's called Beating the Middle. A policy framework for modern income housing accessibility. So I went over the key points of that with City Council, and there was some discussion about what they liked about the research paper, what they thought maybe didn't apply to South Ogden. But one of their comments was that they wanted to hear from Planning Commission and kind of hear what your thoughts are, what was suggested in the paper, and some sort of an idea to move forward. The goal is to have a second conversation with City Council in a work session, hopefully in July, to kind of go over, okay, this is the direction that you mentioned you wanted to go. Here's a little bit more research on that. This is what Planning Commission had to say about this. How do we make this happen? So very briefly, we can go over the key points for the research paper. I guess to start off, any questions on the suggestions in the research paper?
Sorry if I missed it again. Who's asking for this again?
City Council. So this was discussed with them at the May 20th
I guess
City Council meeting, and they just wanted to hear planning commission's thoughts on it.
I guess, how did it come to the city council is maybe more what I'm trying to assess, like,
Or like
is
how it
like,
came
is
to
it
the
coming from the
city.
state? Like, what's the driving factor in,
For this specific research
yeah,
paper.
and to change and,
So it was, and there's some history there that I'm not well versed on, just because I wasn't with the city back in 2023. To my understanding, it's something that was submitted to the city. So Matt had some conversation with a law student at the time who put together this research paper. And it did count, and it was reported on last year's Modern Income Housing Report as, hey, this information was handed to the city. It just was never reviewed.
is this,
This is more so it can count towards, I guess, research for one of our strategies, our modern income housing.
one of our,
5.
okay,
Yeah, strategy 2, which
Gotcha.
is,
that helps, thank you.
yeah, preserve existing and new modern income housing and subsidize units by utilizing a landlord incentive program provided for deed restricted units through a grant program or establishing a housing loss mitigation fund. So basically, the research paper just kind of goes through what those are and what other cities are doing. Yeah, it talked about different cities in California and Colorado, and even within Utah. It was mostly, I believe, Park City, Salt Lake City, and maybe Moab. Kind of what they're doing, the incentives for their landlords, right? How, well, the example that was used was more for getting them to accept vouchers. And kind of working with them and, finding out what incentives worked for them. Part of it was having the landlords apply for, like, to recoup not a down payment. Why is this me?
Like when I was reading through it, like, it's kind of like a safety net for landlords.
Yeah.
If,
Yeah.
like if people just don't pay their rent or trash the house when they move out.
Yeah. Right. It's just so they can feel like, okay, even if this happens, the city will help me out in some way, shape, or form. It also had suggestions on, like, maybe working with local businesses and having, what things can they help with landlords, like maybe discounts, things like that. It talked about how to implement more deed restrictions. And then, yeah, that's mainly it.
And so what you're wanting, or I should say not you, but the city council wanting from us is just our thoughts on whether we
Like what-
think these are good for South Ogden City, like which
What-
elements of it?
Yeah, what direction would you want to go?
I guess what is,
Ultimately, if there was going to be any change
Gosh.
as a result of this report
Mm-hmm.
that you think would really move the needle as far as moderate income housing in South Ogden, which of these would you be supportive of addressing to try to achieve that? And I
Yeah.
think council's discussion was, some of these just don't make sense for South Ogden.
yeah,
Some of
I agree.
them may be great, but do we have the money to put towards those? So we
Yeah.
have to, make a financial investment. If we were gonna make that financial investment, which of these tactics would your body be supportive of investing in or directing the council to invest in? And I just don't think they were ready to make those kinds of decisions without you guys having.
They just wanted to involve you more. They did express a certain way that they would like to go. But before diving into that, they wanted to hear what you guys had to say. At the end of the staff report, I do give a few suggestions as to just different things to consider and possibly do or use. And it's mainly working with property owners, right? Like if we wanted to go down the route of deed restriction, right? Maybe be a little bit more flexible with our zoning code. Maybe it's putting in a cottage lot, maybe it's allowing a flag lot or something like that, as long as that new unit would be deed restricted. Maybe we don't want to go down that route. Maybe we want to have an open house to discuss that with landlords and current residents. Or maybe it's using whatever funds we have for new development, right? And having those be, maybe a certain percentage be deed restricted. So what would you be more in favor of? Or it's even working with the Utah Preservation Fund and donating to them and having them come in and do most of the work and finding homes to deed restrict. Maybe we don't want to deed restrict at all.
Does South Ogden still do the Good Landlord program?
Yes.
I like a lot of the landlord incentive programs, although I doubt South Ogden is in a position to help with security deposits and damage protection, but some of these low-cost and no-cost incentives are good, I think.
Okay. Which ones did you like, I guess, from the low cost or no cost?
So are you thinking on this, the list of stuff on page 10 and 11? Is that what we're looking at?
From the research paper, you mean?
Yeah.
Or-
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
And it doesn't have to be that. It could be
I'm
something
looking
totally
at the
different.
summary on the staff report, but
Oh,
That too.
Yeah.
I guess we can start with, or we can continue with that, but what didn't you like about what was suggested in the research paper? Because I know, I mean, these are bigger cities, and I think I kind of mentioned that in the staff report. Like, they have their own housing authority. They're bigger, they have more tourism, they have more money to work with. But from the examples that were given for landlord incentive programs and deed restricted programs or housing loss mitigation funds, was there something that said, well, maybe not exactly that, but maybe we can do something like that here? And really it's looking at, do we want to look at new development coming in and create new affordable housing there and or preserve affordable housing that does exist in South Ogden?
I guess I'm just, South Ogden's pretty built out, right? So I'm
Yeah.
just trying to figure out, like,
But there's still redevelopment, like in our north nodes and south nodes, right, where our form-based code
yeah,
basically comes into play. And especially with our city center, small area plan that's going to be coming into play. We're going to be planning that out a little bit more. There's going to be more that's coming in as
Just-
redevelopment.
I'm just trying to think, like, some of these that we implement, is it just going to cause, like, our property drive outside investors to be like, oh, look, South Ogden has all these good landlord incentive programs.
Mhm.
Let's swoop in there, like all these external investors, and become landlords, driving out, driving up costs
Sure.
and displacing maybe homeowners with renters. I guess that's kind of my, like, what are the externalities that some of these will cause? And I'm having a hard time
Right,
thinking of all of them. And so I just don't, I know the problem we're trying to solve is moderate income housing, but
That would be affordable.
being
for
kind of
people.
built out, that's going to cause maybe some unintended negative things that we're not thinking of. So I really don't know what to do with this. So I hope you guys are a lot smarter
Yeah,
than me.
I'm starting to figure out what we do with it as well.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they've got examples from like New York City and LA and stuff like that. It's really hard to
Park City, right?
In Park City, yeah.
Salt
it's
Lake.
just-
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult. We do know that there is a housing crisis taking place. The general consensus, I would say, is that people feel that housing is unaffordable, and even the apartments and things that have gone in are luxury apartments that still seem to be unaffordable for most people. However, on the other side, I think that there's also some strong feelings about bringing in more apartments. Like if you were to say like, okay, but we're going to add more apartments to the city, but these are specifically like low income or moderate income apartments, I think we'll see a lot of pushback on that because people are feeling like there's already so many apartment buildings being put up everywhere. So then I kind of lean into like, okay, what can we do with the existing, housing that we have, rather than looking at building out more. I think people might be more on board with that.
Yeah, and I mean, they're going to be built because they're allowed to be built, and we don't have a density cap per se in those form-based codes for our north and south nodes. It's more about like, well, with all these other requirements, how many, with parking requirements, landscape, or possibly open space, how many you can put in there. So regardless, they're going to get built, right? It's just, okay, do we require a certain percentage? And I believe that is a different strategy that we can possibly look into adding to our modern income housing implementation report. Or saying, hey, maybe, we have some funds. Can we use that to incentivize these new apartment buildings or whatever to deed restrict a certain amount? We have one. It hasn't been built. I don't think it's even applied for site plan. But there is like a master development agreement where I think 5 units are being deed restricted for workforce housing. So for teachers, firefighters, police, city employees. So that was kind of the first time that the city kind of experimented with that. But it's thinking, okay, do we want to go down that direction and have more master development agreements where a certain percentage or a certain number is deed restricted? Or do we want to focus more on helping preserve what's already affordable here for existing residents?
So are you going to say something?
Nope, go for it.
I was just trying to think of like the alternative because a lot of the cities compared here are very, wealthy
Right.
cities that have a lot of money. And actually to get into a home in those cities costs a lot. And sometimes government tries to create solutions to things where free market ends up driving costs down.
Yep.
So I guess if there were steps in here that
Like on how to do it?
like reduced government regulations, like slashed regulations that helped the free market flourish to provide, cheaper things. But when I read this, it's adding, like the stuff I read in here, just from my study of economics,
Yeah.
and government involvement, that actually drives up costs. Like government thinks they help a lot, but they don't always help. They actually just drive up costs in certain situations.
Right. And that was also a thought, right? And just with deed restriction in general, I know it's different than rent stabilization or the right word is escaping me.
Subsidizing?
No, it's like a rent control, I guess. But yeah, it's basically, it's similar. It's not the same thing, right? But that does have negative effects too. And so it's having that balance of like, well, is this going to hurt us to have more units be deed restricted? Yeah, it's going to help that person that's moving in afford that apartment or that house, whatever it may be. But how is it going to affect the rest of the market, especially since we're one city, right? We're only thinking about us. But if another city does the same tactic, what is that going to do to the market? That's also something to consider. So do we not, so because of that, maybe we don't want to go down that route, and maybe we want to do more of like, how can we help existing residents, I don't know, upgrade their house, or, I don't know, give them some sort of incentive that maybe won't affect the market as much.
I feel like I just don't know enough about this topic
It's
to
okay.
like, I don't know, I'm just,
Yeah. What is it the city council really wants us to say here?
No,
They
they
want us-
have to tell you what to
I mean,
say.
can we just say, we don't agree with any of this? I mean,
I mean, I guess if you have any other thoughts or ideas, they mentioned that they wanted to do something similar to Ogden. I'll see if I can pull it up. Like an
Like-
own in Ogden, and you can apply and get some sort of like 10,000, 15,000.
to like help buy the home.
Yeah, like is that gonna help that much? Maybe, maybe not. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Ogden had a thing, I don't know if that's the same thing, but they were like first-time home buyers, if they would go buy kind of a dilapidated house and fix it up, is that the same?
It's not the same thing, but I know that's a different program that I think Ogden still has. I'm not sure if it's as popular, but yeah. Yeah, this is just, it could be a new house or an older house. I think it says up here, you can buy an existing home up to 430,000 or a newly construction home for up to 467,000. That's what their program is right now. And so they mentioned wanting to do something like that. But yeah, do we
Yeah.
have the funds to do that?
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
great program if you have the money to do it. And I mean, I know a guy I work with lives in Layton. They gave him quite a bit of money to get into his house. They put a lien on the house for that money, but it went away in increments. And I think as long as he was there 5 years, then he never has to repay it or something like that. It was an incentive to get into an older home and stay there, kind of
Yep.
thing, which worked for him, but
So does the city recoup the cost just through property tax? Is that kind of like, how does this,
Yeah, I mean, we would have to, right. And we would have to dive into this. But before, I guess, going down this rabbit hole, something we want to do, or we want to really strongly consider.
I like the idea of helping people get into homes, but,
Yeah.
so I think this is great. But we're kind of built out. Pretty much the only thing that really happens here now is people buy up a couple lots, tear them down and build apartments. So,
Well, not necessarily, depending on the zone. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
do we have new homes anywhere going in? Maybe we do, and I just, not,
Not really. I mean, we do in like North Node, South Node, but
I
not.
guess we could go create a program like this, but like, is it going to affect like,
It doesn't have
like-
to be a new home.
oh, that's right.
It
That's
could
right.
be existing.
That's right. Sorry.
At least that's what theirs is, right?
Yeah.
could
and
be
it kind of
doing something
depends on
similar.
what your incentive is. You could limit it to a certain area if you're trying to get people to
Sure.
move into an older part of town or fix up a home that's dilapidated or,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, we can also look at buying properties, right? Do
Mhm.
we want to buy a couple and kind of help people in that way? Maybe we don't. We're like, hey, no, we don't want to intervene in that way. But yeah, this is kind of what was mostly mentioned in the city council meeting, is having a program that's similar to this, or having a program that would help already like existing landlords fix up their home. So kind of similar to what was mentioned in the first part of the research paper.
Sorry, I didn't read. This isn't in our packet though, right?
No,
Okay.
no.
What,
This is just what was mentioned in the city.
so in the,
council
in the
meeting.
city council meeting, is this just for like, is that one for first, I can't really read it, but is it for first-time home buyers or just anyone?
I think it's just anyone.
And the restriction about the, like, the longer the person lives there, the the less the lien becomes until at some point he doesn't have to pay it back. I mean, that would prevent people who want to just come in and make it a rental. They couldn't do that because owner has to occupy the home. So if that is something that you would want, then that's you need to do something like that.
Does city council want an answer by like the next time they meet? Or?
No, they didn't really set a timeline or time frame. I'm just hoping to have a second conversation with them by the second meeting in July. So we can keep talking about this. Maybe this is just a starter, right? And then we have a month in between, right? Now and next time.
I think I need to do a little more research
Yeah,
on
for
this
sure.
before I personally feel comfortable making a decision.
I agree, and I think better in writing than, I have some thoughts, but I like to write them out. So.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is not the only time where we're going to talk about moderate income housing. This is going to be an ongoing thing. It was more or less like, well, for right now, just having the information from this paper / whatever you may already have about affordable housing, do you want to go more down this route or more of like, well, let's try different incentives that maybe aren't like monetary?
So what you're showing us here is more, I think, home ownership,
Mm-hmm.
but what's on this paper is more
Rental.
kind of rental. And so I think just hearing the discussion up here, I think people are more excited about helping people have home ownership than maybe just being a renter.
Yeah.
So I think strategies on home ownership are a little more exciting for the crowd here.
Last question for me on this. How, just because I'm new to the council and everything, I guess I don't really have a good feel for what is within South Ogden's like ability to help out with. Like, I don't want
Right.
to come to the next meeting with like this great plan and all this research, and then it's like, well, that's like reaching for the stars, right?
Yeah.
So how do I know like what is within our ability to do?
Can I say something about
Sure.
that? When we do any type of TIF, if you know what that is, when we incentivize developers to come by like lowering their taxes for a certain amount of time, and then as the property value goes up, anyway, we
Right.
collect monies, and some of it has to go towards a housing fund.
Yeah.
And so along those ways, we've collected, did somebody tell you?
So we have 225,000, and we're kind of looking at between 20 and 30,000 annually. So, you know,
So right now, that's
Lot.
about all we have.
Okay,
Yes.
that's good. I mean, that's just a good jumping off point for me.
yeah, and another, I guess, hopefully tag along with the next city council discussion will be property that we own. It's not that much. We own one that we've been kind of looking at whether or not to develop or to sell. So that can also come into play. So if we do end up selling that property, that's more money that we can put right back in. Or maybe, like I said, we want to buy different property and work with Habitat for Humanity or whatever.
Is that the one by the Ogden Athletic Club?
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, that was a discussion at one point.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So that's what we have right now. So keep in mind it could be 20 to 30 if everything goes well with, tax increment. But is that enough? Maybe I don't know. I don't think it is.
I
but-
don't think, for home purchasing, I don't think so, but maybe for rental, like if we're talking about just, security deposits and if they trash the place, you know, that we might have more wiggle room
Yeah.
there with that amount.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking earlier. Security deposit.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Couldn't think of it. Like, but it's not a down payment.
Yep,
It's what you. Yeah.
security deposits.
I think TIF probably stands for tax incentive fee. I'm just guessing though.
Tax increment financing.
Oh, that's wrong.
So, TIP comes from designated areas that we have, designated for,
Redevelopment.
revitalization and they're in certain pockets, you'd have to look at the map to see. And in those certain areas, we can collect tax increment
Right.
and then distribute it in those areas.
Gotcha.
For whether it's economic development or residential development or redevelopment, whatever the case, whatever that area is designated, for. So we collect that for an initial amount of time,
Mhm.
and instead of sending it to school districts or the other taxing entities, we collect that. And then the reason they would give that up for that amount of time is because when it does come on their rolls, whether it's 20, 30, 50 years down the road, depending on how that area is set up, then they have a property that is going to be worth more than it was when it went on the roll, when it was nothing before, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The value grows.
Yeah.
And it ends up that they get as much or maybe even more.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha. Thanks.
And most of those areas are redevelopment areas.
Right.
So what are we thinking? Do we want to just discuss this next time?
And I guess question for you guys. I mean, I'm assuming you guys, maybe with the exception of you because you're new, but you about tax increment financing and CRA. Yes? No? Because we can dive into that a little bit more. That's why I'm asking. I'm just assuming that
We
you're
could probably
aware
use,
of it.
are you asking us if we could use some training in that?
Yeah, or how much do you know? Maybe you're, because I'm assuming you know all about this that's going
No,
on.
I don't.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, we can go over that in like a work session or even in a meeting later on in the future. We can go through our form-based code too and how that ties together.
I mean, is that really in our lane or is that more
What's
city?
to understand what's
Okay, 'cause
happening.
I know the finance side of things is, in past meetings, you guys have been like, that's city council's lane.
No, but you can still know about it
Yeah.
and understand what's going on.
Yeah, so it really is the city council acting as the CDRA board, the Community Development and Renewal Agency. And so you're right, you don't really have a say on that. However, it's good to know.
Okay.
Okay,
Some training would be great.
that helps me.
All right, so on this, do we need to make a motion to just bring it on the
No.
agenda next time or just move on to the?
No, I'll put it on there again to discuss further, and probably it'll be on the August one as well,
Okay.
because hopefully, if I had that conversation in City Council in July, it'll be more of an update for you guys of this is how it went, this is the direction that it's going.
So talking about future meetings, I'm actually going to be gone next month
Okay.
on a family vacation, so
That means that when you're gone, they vote you in to be the chair.
Yeah.
Just be advised.
Yeah.
What happens when you miss a meeting?
Yeah. It's true.
All the jobs.
I'll recommend you
I
guys.
will actually be gone also.
Well, there we have our chair and our vice chair.
Right there.
We've done that before.
And I know another commissioner won't be here either.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay, that opens the.
so that's 4. Okay.
Knowing that we're that tight, if anybody else is going to miss, probably
yeah, let us know.
Give us a heads up so we don't have a meeting.
We can either cancel it or we'll know that we have enough people.
We could just cancel it now if we're thinking. What did you tentatively have on the agenda?
Rob Terry was gonna come,
Oh.
but we can move that. We can reschedule. But other items on the agenda, I'm not sure yet. I guess this discussion, which can wait too.
Maybe on the 10th, our next meeting.
Whatever that second Thursday is. Sure.
The 10th, July 10th.
Okay, then yeah.
Is that the 10th?
Yeah, should we cancel that and reschedule Rob so that everybody can, so we have a chance?
Was he providing training?
Yeah, he was going to come for a work session to talk about variances, appeals, and exceptions.
Yeah, if so many of
we
us
can-
are gone, that'd be really
Yeah.
nice to, I'd like to be there for that, so.
Okay.
But I guess we are recording it. So I could always just go back and watch it, so either way.
Think about it. We can revisit this in a few minutes under
Okay.
staff reports.
All right, so do you want, I guess we're moving on to item 4C.
Mhm. Active transportation plan. Now, this discussion can be 2 minutes or it can be longer. I know we've kind of just briefly been talking about this since our joint session back in February with City Council. Part of it is because it was part of our implementation plan, or it is part of our implementation plan and our general plan. But it also kind of stemmed from last October, our WFRC activity. We were looking at land use and bike routes and just things like that. So I wanted to kind of touch base. I know that, so this was adopted back, or this was put together back in 2019, 2020. And we were part of a Tri-City grant with Washington Terrace, Riverdale, and us. Basically looked at how we can improve active transportation for our residents. So that's mostly talking about biking infrastructure, but I know the plan also talked about putting in sidewalks. And it's also throughout our general plan. It's mentioned quite a few times within our general plan. It's been 5 years since it's been adopted. I guess is assumptions, because I've only been here less than a year, that it wasn't really looked at too much in depth after 2020. We've had new commissioners since then. Not a lot of progress has been made on it. And so because of that, I wanted to kind of touch base and say, hey, let's revisit it. What are your thoughts on it now? Also, it does tie into our city center. And if you recall, we did receive a grant earlier this year for a small area plan for a city center. So part of that is we talk about like a mobility hub. And we want the connection city center to the south node and just for all the residential area in between. And so what does that look like? Right, and so that's something that we can start thinking about. But for now, I guess the main thing for this plan is to look at the biking infrastructure. And so part of the staff report was outlining these questions of what do I like about it? What don't I like about this plan? Are there certain areas where I think that the bike path that was suggested makes sense? Maybe it doesn't make sense. And this is based off of your own experience living in that specific neighborhood or hearing from neighbors. Like what are some concerns or some praises for that? What is something that you want to learn more about? Maybe there's something that stuck out in the plan. You're like, well, I'm not 100% sure of that. Maybe you can gather more information and we can talk about it later. Is it still relevant? Do we want to update it? And part of that question comes from having a very brief conversation with Bike Utah. So that's one of the consulting firms that is interested in our city center. And so I was discussing like, hey, this is kind of what we're looking for according to our general plan. And the person I was speaking to basically said about once a year we do like a free plan, like an active transportation plan for cities. So if this is something that we want to update, maybe that's something I can talk to him about. And maybe it's not this year or next, but maybe in the future we can look at updating this plan. Or maybe you read through it and said, you know what, this is great, 100%, no notes. We should just try to implement and moving forward. So yeah. And I did outline in the staff report certain pages. Like if nothing else, just mainly look at these pages. And it was mainly looking at this map and looking at the different facility types or pathways and where they were suggested to be located throughout the city. And this page kind of goes over what does it look like when it's a shared lane, when it's buffered. So yeah. What are your initial thoughts, I guess, on this active transportation plan?
For me, I am generally really pro bike lanes in South Ogden. I've thought that we needed more bike lanes since I moved here almost 11 years ago. I did take a pretty close look through the entire map to see where we were thinking about placing them, and I think considering appeared to me the goal was to get to the city center, like from any area. The roads chosen made a lot of sense. Where I did have some concerns and would suggest maybe doing another study and looking into it a little bit differently. I noticed that Edgewood Drive was one of the roads specifically that was going to receive a bike lane. I live on Edgewood Drive, so I'm very, very familiar with that street.
Hey, you're my neighbor.
Nice. So you probably might know what I'm about ready to say. Cars are insane going.
Zip up there.
And where I live especially is right at the top of Edgewood Drive, right as it's okay. So
Look over here.
right when you're like starting to turn that corner. And it's pretty dangerous. It's even difficult for me to back out of my driveway because you can't see when cars are coming, and because you're coming down the hill and the street is so wide, even though speed limit's 25, people regularly go 45 to 50.
Yeah.
Confirmation. Okay.
We don't allow our kids to like cross the road at times because we're terrified.
It's that bad. Like even when I'm getting my mail, like it's scary at times. So to put a bike lane there, I'm worried for the safety of bikers, because bike lanes, I think, make people have maybe a false sense of safety. Like, oh, I'm in a bike lane, I'm safe in this area, and I don't know that is true on this particular road. However, I'm not against putting bike lanes there, but I think that additional measures would need to also be placed there, like maybe more signage or a road dip, like this, not a speed bump or something like that to slow down the traffic on that road, because it's really bad. So I just think we would need to look at that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think like a buffered bike lane would help at all? I mean, I guess a little bit for their safety, but that doesn't.
I think it would a little bit. I think another concern is I know a lot of people do street parking on that road, and so I could see some pushback with putting bike lanes in at all, like, because if that takes away any street parking, and then if we do a buffered bike lane, I think that makes it even worse, probably, taking up more space for the bike lane.
Well, that is a pretty wide road.
It is pretty wide.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe having the narrow road would help people slow down a bit. I mean, yeah.
I just
it
think
is what
like
it
we
is.
need to do something extra there to get people to slow down.
Okay.
You know this house?
Oh yeah.
It's like, I know exactly where you live now.
Are you on the
Okay.
thing?
No, that's
Or on
great
Google
feedback.
Maps? What were you on, Google Maps?
Google Maps.
And also, I mean, it also mentioned in the plan that this is fluid, right? We don't have to follow it exactly how it is. But yeah, that's why I want to hear.
You and that have
Your
to-
Question
perspective.
two is the SUP
Oh, yeah.
1
Um,
and 4
By
and
the
all
Wheelers.
those.
Uh-huh.
I don't think we even maintain those trails.
I know the ones, I don't know the last ones.
Ooh.
The one on the other side of me, is that what I'm
I know it's there, and I
Mhm.
know there's right of way for it, but I don't think it's even maintained. I don't think you can even get on those.
Yeah. And the next
The-
house. is
You said the
Carol's.
SUP one?
Yeah, I know
So
right
there's
where
it's a shared use path.
Uh-huh.
I'm specifically looking at the one that's at the very kind of southeasterly portion of the city there. They call SUP-1 and 4.
And you're
I
saying
don't-
that we don't maintain those?
I don't think we do.
Okay.
The only thing I would say there is that if we're not already, we probably should be. You know?
So,
And I'm pretty sure this SUP-1 is the one that kind of wraps around the knoll down there. It's kind of Weber County as well, and it's just overgrown right now. I know a lot of people have asked about the old right-of-way through there as well.
Gotcha.
So I
Yeah.
know a right-of-way does exist, but it's not maintained.
Okay. Yeah, we'll
So
take,
this-
I can take a
we'll have
look
to
at that.
Maybe discuss how we maintain those a little bit better so people can actually use them.
Yeah. Yeah, we can look into that more. See what's going on there. No, that's a good point. Because yeah, before we can even think about putting any infrastructure there, like what's the game plan for that?
so one thing that I keep thinking of, I know when we went through the general plan, what was that 2 years ago, 2 years ago, with Mark?
The updated general plan?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
We
new.
just- about 2 years ago. There was quite a bit of bike infrastructure, I think, also put into that plan.
It was referencing this.
Was it referencing this?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
know they were even talking.
Or are you talking about a separate? Because I know there was a bike plan that was put together in 2016, something like that, maybe. Landmark, I think, put that one together. But as far as the general plan, yeah, that was 2023.
That one was like connecting. The goal of that one was like connecting our green
Mhm.
spaces
Yeah.
and.
Yeah, that's also trails.
Oh yeah, it
Um,
was trails.
yeah.
That's right. Sorry.
Yeah, wait, that counts as active transportation. That's not specifically mentioned in this plan, but you're right, it is mentioned in the general plan.
I guess I'm just curious how well the trails in that and these bike lanes, like how well they.
Come together, those
Yeah,
plans.
like are they harmonious? Do they
They
disagree?
should be, but yeah, you're right. Again, my assumption is all of this was talked through when the general plan was put together. But if it wasn't, no, that's a great conversation to have. And even with Public Works too, like, are you aware of these plans? Do you have any objections for these? What problems do you foresee for the trails and for the biking infrastructure? But yeah, no, that's,
So I remember one thing they brought up is, Birch Creek Hollow along that creek,
yeah.
getting a pathway along there, but I think that's all private property.
Yeah, that's an interesting area. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I want to say it was showing that as existing, but I don't think there's anything in there. So,
There's nothing there.
yeah, that's what I've been told. But yeah, you're right. That does show that. We have to make sure we have that conversation. Because if that doesn't make sense, or it's not even our property to put in, then I know that I want to say that there's been maybe some dispute of who owns that property, because I think in Weber County it shows us. But when talking to our public works director, he's like, no, I don't think that's entirely correct. But so we do need to visit that.
Oh, I just assumed it was private property because people are putting like lawns and fences down there
Yeah.
and stuff. But
Yeah. So, but that's a conversation that needs to continue to be had. But no, that's a good point. Do these two plans make sense together? our biking infrastructure and our trails. Okay.
When you're talking about a hub,
Mhm.
I'm assuming that's a place where buses, bikes, everything
Scooters,
kind of
whatever it might
connect.
be. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's kind of the starting point slash end point. At least that's what we say in our general plan.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm assuming all of this was discussed and we're all aware of what this is. But yes, that's what it is. It's kind of like, okay, if we're going to go to the city center, or if we're starting there and going down south to more of like a commercial area. So I guess later on when we discuss and we're ready to have a small area plan for the south portion of the city, that would also involve some sort of transportation hub. But yeah, that's basically what we're saying it is. Just somewhere that you can park your bike or rent a bike or scooter or take a bus.
I do remember that when we were talking about our first catalytic projects for the general plan, that we talked quite a bit about the trails. I think it was in a combined meeting with both the Planning Commission and City Council.
Okay.
And it was high on the list, but did it make it quite into the catalytic projects? Just, I think, because of the scope and the cost of putting them in, and
All the trails, I mean?
the trails
Okay.
and the bike paths, both.
Okay. And I know one of the catalytic projects, I say it in the staff report, it's like number 3 under one of the different subsections. It does say to start looking at a way to implement the active transportation plan. So that's one of the reasons we're revisiting. Granted, after our joint meeting this year, it wasn't, obviously the main focus is city center, right? So all of those strategies that were chosen had to do with city center. But it wasn't necessarily at the bottom either. It's kind of like, next group, we should start looking at our active transportation plan, which is why I wanted to kind of get somewhat of a head start and start thinking or start looking at like, well, is this still relevant? Or do we want a whole new plan? Yeah. No, but this is good.
I think it's still relevant. There's a lot of good information and
Yeah.
plans in here, so.
Yeah.
I think I like the plan, and I'm with Commissioner Rocha. I'm excited to get more biking, like to make our city more bikeable.
Walkable.
I don't know if we just need to are you wanting us to prioritize? I guess I don't, like, where do we go from here?
Yeah, I guess I just want to know if, before even looking at any possible grant, well, first we got to get through our small area plan and see how this connects to that. And then kind of from there, step out and look at, okay, if once that's established and we want to implement this, what grant do we go after? Is it trying to put the infrastructure into place or redoing the plan? I think it's a good plan. I like that it was a Tri-City grant, that it involved, because we're connected to those cities. We also have to take Ogden into consideration too, and how some of these bike lanes and even trails can connect to them. But I think it was smart to look at 3 cities and see how we can connect to each other. Granted, this plan mainly just talks about ours because it's just for us, but I think the work that was put in was all done at the same time. And we did have quite a bit of participation from what I can tell.
It would be interesting to know if those other 2 cities have implemented any of the trails or
Or the bike.
paths.
and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be, to see, well, okay, if they've done it and it ends at the border of our city, maybe we ought to consider doing that one.
Yeah.
Have we actually striped a bike lane anywhere, painted a bike lane?
Yeah, we have a couple segments. Yeah, and it's
The
just
one
a
map
striping.
showed a green, anyway.
On Glassman? Maybe not even Glassman.
I don't think I even on Glassman, but
I want to say it's by the elementary school.
it was more in the southeast.
I know I've seen a couple, not very many. And I don't know if that was there from years ago or if it was fairly recent. But yeah, we don't have all that much.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments?
Is there a way to put like, so I love the plan kind of as is, but with like I don't know. Like I like where the plan is to put bike lanes, but like I was saying, I think some roads, and if that's, I only know of Edgewood because I live on it, and I'm guessing that there's going to be other streets that have similar issues. How could we include like that we need like a speed bump or additional signage on these roads before you put bike lanes in, or I don't know, or is that like a completely different thing that we would have to do separate?
We could probably do some sort of study of this area, because that is important to take into consideration, right? Like if
Safety.
all these cars are going past, that's maybe just an issue in your neighborhood and not in another,
Right.
or maybe it's an issue throughout the city. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's something we can look at. Like, what other measures can we put in, and maybe that's a different plan that we can look at or acquire.
If you could tell a police officer to sit at the top of Edgewood, like on the side
That's
street
what I
on
was
the top of
thinking. I'm
Edgewood,
like,
they'd
do we need to
get,
send more?
they would
police in
get
that
tickets
area?
all day long because they come just buzzing by my house
Yeah.
all day long.
Interesting.
Speed limit's 25 and easily going 45, 50.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
To the point where people will be in my house and they hear it like outside and they're like, "What was that?" I'm like, "Just another day."
Right.
Like, just-
And because they're going up the hill, it's like, "Grrr,"
Yeah,
you know.
that-
It's probably because the road is pretty wide.
Yeah, I think the wide road and the hill, people naturally want to go fast
faster.
downhill. The two
Understand.
combined just makes for a problem.
Okay.
So do we
No,
want to
this
move
is
on
good
to
feedback.
4D?
Yeah, 14. um, this is on here just because after last meeting, it kind of sounded like we wanted it back on the agenda. I don't, and really from my perspective, it wasn't really to discuss it further. It was just like, okay, what do we want to do with it right now with short-term rentals? Right? Do we want to shelve it for do we want to set a certain time limit of like, let's not even revisit it until November or until next year? Or what are your thoughts of where we're at? We don't have to discuss the specifics of the ordinance or anything like that. I think we've done that a
Well, I
lot.
think Commissioner DDA? And he made a comment, you know, we had depending on who shows up,
Right.
it can totally swing the vote. Where he's like, if you vote on this next time, I'm sure it'll pass. Because we just had very few numbers.
Yeah.
And it just so happened we were kind of split, right?
Yeah, and part of it was, now the chair can vote, and we have a new commissioner. But we also have two commissioners that aren't here tonight, and we may or may not have, a full quorum next time. So,
We rarely have
all
all of the
seven.
commissioners
Yeah.
here. It's,
yeah, I don't think I've been to a meeting where all seven of you are here. So yeah, I guess where
so
are
I
we at
guess,
right now?
what are our options? Is it something that we could say we're ready to forward this on to the city council?
Potentially, I mean, we can put it on the next agenda, whenever that is, to discuss it one more time and to give some sort of a positive or a negative recommendation and just have it move on to city council. Or you could put a time limit of like, okay, maybe not in July or August, but maybe in September, October, let's bring it back.
I think we just voted to create a 90-day thing, so
That's
let's put it
Yes,
on
we
in
did.
90 days.
from last time, right? Or I guess this one? I would count it from last time.
That's for you to decide, whether it's 90 days from tonight or 90 days from, your previous meeting
I mean, I'm not in a-
April.
I'm not in a hurry. I don't plan on moving anytime soon. So,
90 days from tonight's what I say, but
All right. Are we all on board with that?
I also think you probably, if it is important to people, and you put a date out there that far in the future, then you've given everybody the chance to make arrangements to be here if they
Our
want
passion.
to be part of the vote,
Yeah.
right? So the sooner we can get it on, the sooner people can say, sorry, I'm not scheduling that vacation to Hawaii because I'm going to vote in Georgia.
No. He's like, wait, let me check my
You
schedule.
know what I mean? It's a lot easier to say, you know, schedule that and prepare for it versus just having it pop up and you've already got other plans.
Yeah,
So
let me
that's
see.
September, are you looking at your calendar?
Yeah, that's what
Okay,
I'm
tell
looking
me, because I don't have mine up yet.
July, August. Yeah, I would say it's September 11.
September 11th. Oh, that's a day.
Yep. And the next one would be October 9th. That's more than 90 days, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. Are we good with September, October 9th? October 9th would be more than the 90 days, but
I think 90 days is the minimum, right?
yeah.
I'd be good with October or September.
And that would be so poetic since last October was when this started.
We've been dealing with this for.
No, yeah, you guys have been dealing with
Feels
it for
like
a long time,
forever.
but it got brought up again last October. So I kind of like that.
October?
October. Are we okay
all
with
good
that?
October?
that's fine.
I think we're good with October.
Okay, October.
So are we doing a public hearing for it too, or just?
We don't need to because we had one, but I mean, I guess we could have a second one if we really wanted one.
We could, we can have as many public
As you want, yeah. And that does give you time to talk to your friends and neighbors. Let them know that we could potentially have a public hearing that day. Yeah,
do you
'cause
guys
we
think
already
should
did.
have a public hearing again on it, or? I think it's always good to hear from the public, so.
Yeah, just spread the word.
What do
Okay.
you think about doing another survey? It's been 2 years, 3 years since we did it?
I think, yeah, 2-3 years.
I like it with what you suggested about not just yes or no. It's like yes with the like regulations.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the questions. I know that the survey wasn't just like, do you want it or not? And that's it. Like, it's over. It was a few questions.
Was it?
Yeah, it was like 8
That might have not been the
questions,
one
something
I
like
did, 'cause
that.
Mine
No,
just
'cause it
asked,
was 2 questions.
Was it 2?
mine just asked.
Okay, I
do
thought
you
it was
agree
more
with
than that.
Yes or no, it's like, well, yes.
Because I know I saw the yes or no, and then I saw something about, I think, owner occupied. And because I remember thinking, that's weird. Why are there more people answering this question and not the first question?
I don't know that I ever saw that one.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. But I just don't remember what it was last time. No. Do we want to have a second survey? How do we feel about that?
Maybe we look up what was sent out and send it to the commission and then see if there's other questions you would recommend adding.
I like
Sure.
Does it make sense to, on the survey, put when the public hearing for it will be? That way people are aware of, like, this is when we're discussing this topic.
We could.
I think that's
Yeah.
the quickest way to get the word out.
Yeah, and we'll also put it on social media, and you guys will spread the word of mouth too.
It
Well,
might be just thinking out loud, just in case you guys decide not to do a public hearing, you'd hate to overpromise and underdeliver. However, you could say, the planning commission is revisiting, short-term rentals, and we meet on the second Thursday of every month.
Kind of could be
If
a
you're interested in
public
being-
comment.
That's
If
what I'm
you're
saying.
interested in hearing have it due in September, so you have a month to look over all the data before the October meeting.
Mhm.
But we can say, because they're going to be rediscussing it, so people can always come for public comment during that time if you're not having a hearing. Right.
Well, this sounded like you guys did want a hearing, though, right? No?
It just
Maybe?
gives you an out if you decide, oh, we get the survey results back, we got all the feedback we need.
So 90% of people said this.
Yeah, we're not, or, and again, you can over-deliver by doing a public hearing, but you're not promising a public hearing.
I mean, obviously, we got tons more feedback from a survey than we do from public hearings, as you have seen many times, so.
But that may just because they're not aware that they're happening. I still think that the people that showed up was because they happened to ask the question within the month or two before. And that's what it is in general, right? Like, when they show up, it's for a reason because they get something in the mail that says, hey, somebody within X amount of feet from you, right, it wants to do a rezone. And that's when they show up because they're aware of it. Granted, it is the resident's responsibility, right, to know what's going on in the city, to look up at the website or to go to utah.gov. But I just think they weren't aware of it. But hey, it's true. If we get more participation, if I can participate from home, great, and I don't have to go into a planning commission meeting and sacrifice a Thursday evening, you may not get many people here. They may prefer the survey.
All right, what are we thinking?
Yeah, what are we thinking?
I think we don't say public hearing. I agree. We just say the planning commission is considering revisiting this. We want your input. We will have a meeting on it later in the
At
year.
some point, yeah.
Just leave it kind of open-ended.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's probably wise.
But we can still have it on the October
Yeah.
9th for discussion. Okay. Cool.
All right, should we move on to approval of minutes of previous meeting?
Move that we approve the minutes of the meeting of April 10th.
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving on to agenda item 6, staff reports. City council updates.
I mean, I guess we mostly went over them. They approved the ordinance change, so the chair can now vote. And yeah, the other thing has just been talking about modern income housing. Whatever, I will keep you guys updated on whatever discussion happens with city council, and we'll kind of go from there. As far as planning commission meeting updates, guess this is the time to revisit if we should or shouldn't have a meeting next month. I do have Rob Terry coming to talk about appeals, variances, and exceptions, but we can always reschedule if we cancel the meeting.
Thinking if you already have them scheduled and if enough commissioners are here, I'd just say press,
Slot it.
and then those of us that can't make it can just watch the recording. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. But
Okay.
if someone wants to reschedule them or cancel the meeting,
Yeah, just Commissioner Bradley and yourself are not coming next week, right? And then Commissioner Caldwell said he wasn't going to be here either. So if Commissioner Didier comes, then we do have a quorum. We would just have to check with him.
So just, I guess for sake of seeing,
Yeah.
if we moved it to the Tuesday before, like on the 8th, just to have that work session, would that
Okay.
make a difference to you?
I'm gone that whole week. But,
Okay.
again, I have a
You
long
don't-
commute, so I can listen to recordings.
Yeah, we can also potentially have it a different Thursday, different
Okay.
day, just for that month. How do we feel about that?
Sure. That's the only Thursday I'm gone that whole month, but it's,
It's available any other day. Yeah, so that's your option, to have it a different Thursday or any other day in that month, or cancel it. Or to leave it as is and maybe we'll have a quorum.
What are you thinking?
We also don't know 100%.
one of the Thursdays is a third, the other's the 24th. They're both holidays.
Thursdays are just not good. It could be a different date too. If not, I mean,
Maybe leave it.
we can not decide anything right now and then check with Commissioner Didier or Didier,
Mhm.
and see if we'll have a quorum. Okay. Okay,
If
and
you're not taking any action, you don't necessarily need a quorum.
but we could. I don't know what else we could have. We'll have on there. We may or may not have something that would require an action.
Just call it training.
Yeah.
And it-
For the work session, you mean?
Yeah, you just don't have a policy session, just do a work session for,
But we may or may not have something come in
that's true.
that would require vote. I don't have anything right now, but there might be something looming that would require it. Granted, we can always just say, hey, it's just a work session.
You also,
Our next meeting is not till August. That is what it is.
you also kind of hate to have Rob Terry come if there's three
Only
people.
gonna 3 people. That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah, that's great. I can just try to reschedule with him at some other point in the year, regardless if we have a meeting or not.
I know summer's always kind of hard just with kids out of school, people going on vacation, so.
Right. Yeah, I can see if he can make it in the fall or in the winter.
We know everybody's gonna be here in October.
Right. It's like, you should come for October 9th. That one's going to be a great meeting. Yeah,
I don't know,
you'll want to stay for that one.
I think most people on the commissioner forum, we just had
Yeah.
the wrong commission, I shouldn't say the wrong, we just had
No.
the wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we'll either have just a work session, not with Rob Terry, or we'll cancel the meeting. Stay tuned for that, I guess. We don't have to decide right now. So whenever our next meeting is, I do want to discuss ADUs, and that's more so because that's one of our strategies for our moderate income housing and land use permits in July, or whenever, I guess, our next meeting is. It could be August.
Do we need to change something, or,
For land use permits.
yeah,
So since we have our new code compliance official, that's kind of how that conversation got brought up. So that's a good meeting to meet him and have that discussion.
Cool.
Either in July or August. And then I don't have this on the agenda itself, but for update, I have been talking to the planning and zoning director in Mill Creek.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, for a potential field trip. And I was thinking sometime in either August or September. I don't necessarily want to use a Thursday, like the planning commission meeting Thursday. So it could be any day. He's open to the idea. He said, I believe his name is Francis Lilly. He said he'll even accommodate lunch or dinner depending on the
Oh,
time
cool.
that we go. Yeah. So we can meet up there and kind of look at what their city center looks like and talk a little bit more about their process. Maybe via email, I'll ask what your availabilities are and we'll kind of figure out a best date for that. I'll also probably rope in city council, see if any council member wants to come. But yeah, should be fun.
That'll be cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, that's it.
All right. Does anyone else have any other business? I'm curious, you brought up our new code compliance officer. How's that been going?
Good, good. It's our first ever code compliance official, not officer.
Oh. Okay.
We just got a module with iWorks, so we can use that for complaints that you may get. But yeah, he's getting familiar with the city, and I believe it was in the last newsletter where we mentioned his arrival, his new position. So since then, residents have been receptive to that and have been calling him and dropping by, and I think so far it's been good. But yeah, one of our conversations has been land use permits, especially because he worked with Ogden City before, and so that was
Oh,
kind
he
of
has
one of the tools.
experience.
Yeah, he's been a code enforcer before.
Cool. Has he issued any fines or tickets or?
No, not yet. Part of that has been because didn't have a program for him to use. But regardless of that, his method is basically, let me go talk to them first and give them the time
Love it.
frame
Nice.
before jumping straight into fines.
Did that policy we recommended to the city council, did they just approve it as is, or did they adjust any of it?
No, they approved it as is.
Yeah, they did. And a part of the reason I think no citations have been issued is because he has to document all the,
Right.
how many times he contacted them, and what was, like, how much time they were given, and he just hasn't had the software
Right.
available to document all that, but now he does, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that was just approved, I think, last council meeting, right? So he's been going on that. He's getting training on his module for iWorks.
Does anyone else have any other business they'd like to bring up? Everyone just wants to get out of here.
I know.
All right, public comments. Do we have to make a motion to enter public comments?
Nope.
Anyone online? No, we're just streaming it, right? All right, anyone want, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Nay. The ayes have it.